أهلا بحضراتكم على بودكاست فكرة في كلمة. اتكلمنا مع بعض على القلق في الحلقتين اللي فاتوا. النهارده هنتكلم مع بعض على الصدمات النفسية. كتير مننا ما يعرفش ايه هي الصدمات النفسية او ازاي يتعامل معاها، على الرغم ان حياتنا كلها مليانة صدمات نفسية. على فكرة احنا كل يوم بنمر بصدمات نفسية. الصدمات النفسية مش هي إن أنت تفقد حد لا قدّر الله عزيز عليك، أو يحصل لك حاجة صعبة لا قدّر الله. لأ، ده ممكن يكون حتى واحد صاحبك بيحصل له حاجة صعبة أو بيمُر بأزمة، وأنت نَفْسك تلاقي نَفْسك عندك أعراض الصدمة النفسية. طيب خلّينا نعرف مع بعض. النهارده إحنا معانا دكتور كلادا، أستاذ علم النفس جامعة نورث ستيت بولاية كاليفورنيا، بالولايات المتحدة الأمريكية. وهو النهارده كلّمنا على الصدمات النفسية، تعريفها وإزاي نتعامل معاها بشكل مُبسّط. Dr. Kalada, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Mark, for having me. I really enjoyed our first couple episodes on the podcast. I'm looking forward to doing another one.
What is trauma exactly, Dr. Anthony?
So I'll do my best to understand or explain, but I know me talking about it is not the same as one actually suffering or experiencing through it, because it can be very debilitating, very difficult to experience in one's life. But essentially, when we say trauma in a mental health perspective, it's like a life or death experience, or it's a near death experience where someone's life may have felt at danger, or maybe one of their loved ones was at danger, where their life was in jeopardy. And there's a few basic types of trauma, like there's a physical trauma where someone goes through a physical abuse. There is an emotional trauma where someone goes through maybe a betrayal or maybe infidelity in a relationship or something like that. There's also considered to be a sexual form of trauma that people experience.
So, what is the difference between me experience trauma or me experience grieving?
If someone, say someone's, you know, parents died from cancer, they may be grieving the death of their parents. But maybe if someone's parents died from being murdered, not only are they grieving the loss of their parents, but it was such a a shock, a surprise. It's devastating to them that it's almost like their nervous system wasn't ready or prepared for that. So it just goes on this fight or flight mode. And so a lot of times when we see people suffering from trauma, it's because of their brain and their nervous system, the physiology that they have is in this fight or flight mode. And they need to learn how to redirect it to get to its calm or normal state, its state of balance, basically.
Can we simplify the definition of trauma?
Trauma is usually more of a very near-death experience. So it's usually something that is a little bit more than just a surprise. It's like a very fearful near-death experience.
And near death is literally near death or can be illiteral near death?
It it can be literal to them or to someone that's close to them. Or sometimes it can be something that's just repeated over time. For example, like a parent calling their child names like idiot or stupid or they're no good. Maybe over time that's going to add up to a lot of insults or hurt to where it is traumatic in a way.
So, this is a clear definition. Trauma is a near death experience. So if you are grieving due to the loss of someone in your family or the loss of someone you love, it's not trauma.
Right, that's could be a normal part of grieving.
Yeah.
And there's emotion, sadness, anger. That's completely often normal that people go through.
Divorce experience due to betrayal, for example, can this cause trauma? Although it's not a near death experience, or it's death of the relationship, but it's not real death for someone or literal death.
Well, that's a good question. I mean, divorce can have a negative impact not only on the couple but on the children, and even the children witnessing something within the mother and father can be traumatic for the children. So I'm glad you brought that up. Whether it's considered trauma as in the clinical definition, m- we usually see it if there's some sort of like domestic violence or if there was someone cheated on the partner. That is a sense of betrayal or lack of trust, and that is enough to be considered traumatic. Uh, but if it's more someone they aren't able to agree on, like, arguments, or they just petty differences that they can't get over, that may not be enough to be considered trauma from a mental health perspective. But it can definitely have mental health consequences, not only for the couple, but also for the family in its entirety.
Physical abuse is a trauma
Right.
and not necessarily close to death experience, but the brain of the child or the one who get abused will always imagine that they're gonna die due to abuse, right?
Yeah, sometimes they relive the episode of trauma, like weeks or months later, they may get back into that traumatic state just because they it's in their memories now. It's almost in their Mm, there's a book there that someone wrote about trauma. It says the body keeps the score to where it's like in one's unconscious mind and unconscious body, like it's in their physiological makeup that it's hard for them to separate from those past episodes.
It's continuous, coming back.
It can, yeah, it
It
can.
can be coming back. So now we know there is maybe two kind of traumas, which is a serious near-death experience or a serious unfortunate events that happen to someone like abuse, like betrayal or something that can cause trauma. How I can simplify my own diagnosis if I am suffering trauma. Even I cannot recall what happened to me or I cannot identify what happened to me.
I mean, there are some signs that people may experience that can show they've suffered from a traumatic episode. Like maybe they get nightmares or scary dreams of recurring dreams of something in their past, or maybe they have a hard time like going to public places or being in places with crowds, or maybe whenever they go to a new place, they have to know where the exit is in case they need to escape, or they get very startled by what's in their environment. So some of those signs can be people who are suffering from what we diagnose as post-traumatic stress disorder, which could be from traumatic experience that gets into a clinical diagnosis of post-traumatic stress, where they also get mood swings, um, maybe very tearful, anxious, maybe have a lot of anger because they're not able to forgive the person. Maybe they hold guilt for maybe putting it themselves in that situation.
Is there a kind of social trauma?
Okay, what do you mean?
I mean that if someone has been bullied, is this cause trauma? If someone has been even ignored in the community
Sure.
intentionally due to they are, for example, minority or something, is there a trauma, a social
Yeah,
trauma?
those are great points. Yeah, bullying, especially amongst one peers, is too common, and not only in the school setting, but also in community settings like places of worship. And that's a form of betrayal. As and your other question,
I was
oh,
talking
neglect.
neglect.
Yes, yeah, that is also a form of trauma, especially when it comes to uh, people who are very young or people who are older that need to be taken care of.
To summarize this, Dr. Kalada, you mentioned that trauma can be either a near-death experience that one have, which is a huge accident, a form of aggressive abuse, or it can be social trauma due to neglect, due to bullying, due to severe a series of events that hurt a person deeply and hurt their emotion deeply, right? And also there is illiteral near death experience. We talked about it, if we may say that. I know it's not scientific definition, but like betrayal, end of relationship, which was sour and it was not in the right way, which may cause trauma for the couples. And I think this is one of the very popular illiterate trauma in relationship that as divorce, and it can affect the kids as well. And those are the definition, which is great for trauma. Anything else we're missing here, Dr. Kalala, about trauma?
That was pretty comprehensive list.
My question to you now, the signs of trauma. You talked about nightmare and the repetitive nightmare about a certain event that happened to one that keep coming our dream. Is there anything else we need to consider about signs? Anyone having trauma?
Uh, recurrent flashbacks, what we call flashbacks, or intrusive memories of the event, to where someone maybe in a given day just almost relives the episode. They get mood swings, maybe they get uncontrollable anger. Often, what I see or what can happen in children or adolescents who have been traumatized uh, for maybe their parents neglected them or bullied them or they were abused, they may actually get very aggressive or angry, and they may, what they say, black out. They don't remember getting violence with others, but that could actually be related to the trauma they experienced. Or maybe they act out in other ways, like, for example, if you have a young kid who's uh, very sexual more than their age group or what's normal, that could be a sign that they were mistreated sexually when they're younger, and that is playing out with them acting out other ways.
That's very comprehensive. Thank you so much.
So sometimes
Yeah.
kids may be acting out in school,
Yeah.
and they get reprimanded at school, but it's really because they don't have that healthy, loving environment at home.
Yeah.
They're being abused, and so it just comes out in other ways.
How we look for trauma. If we see those behaviors, I know that a professional need to look into the trauma, but I mean, if we don't have the money or we cannot afford a professional, how we can at least neutralize this trauma, if we may say. I know it's gonna be nearly impossible, but do you have any advices we can do?
I mean, in the United States, there's organizations like Child Protective Services or Adult Protective Services that can investigate if there's any signs or concerns that people have that someone is being mistreated. There's these organizations in place that can investigate stuff like that.
So if you are watching us from the United States of America, we are going to get those numbers and websites from Dr. Kalada, and we're gonna attach them in our description, in the description, to make sure that anyone who think they have trauma or they experience trauma, or any loved one who experienced trauma, they can contact those groups or authorities, and they can get the help they need. I will go back to my home, to Middle East. We don't have, at least to my knowledge, and I hope if you guys know about any kind of domestic violence or bullying lines or anything like that, I hope you can guys put it in the comments so we can spread the word about that. But just in case of Kalala, we don't have those association. Okay. We talked, for example, when we talked about an anxiety, about some little strategy that can walk us through an anxiety or help us to live with an anxiety without an anxiety affecting our life. Do you have any recommendation for trauma?
I think, I mean, one of the most important things I think is for forgiveness. Maybe it's forgiveness of the perpetrator, the one who's doing the harm. Maybe it's forgiveness of oneself, because oftentimes people may feel shame or feel like they're inherently bad because they were traumatized. So sometimes there also needs to be forgiveness for something bigger like God. And so from the traumatic experience, what really involves the most healing is to see what good has come from the situation. So depending on how one perceives or thinks about the situation, it could be traumatic for them, or it could be something that is maybe encouraging, uplifting. So it really involves how we look or think about the situation.
But if you're not so religious, or if you even are, can we get the scientific background or the scientific step by step for forgiveness? What do you think, Dr. Anthony, it can be?
I think first of all, I mean, it's forgiveness is a huge concept, and it's it's oftentimes is easier said than done, depending on what kind of betrayal or hurt someone has gone through.
Can we focus on the forget part of it? How to forget?
I wish I knew. I wish there was I wish there's a way to forget, but the forgiveness, forgiveness is going to be something that is fill someone with compassion or comfort or hope or peace. It's going to fill someone with, I think, more with those positive emotions. But when someone is dealing with trauma, oftentimes they may feel angry or bitter or resentment or have these negative feelings or emotions. So when you have forgiveness instead, it'll ideally bring those out, or it'll help those to not make its way back in.
How we can practice forgiveness?
So first of all, you have to make sure you take away the anger, the bitterness, the resentment. And in the previous episode, I talked to points about journaling, and journaling is something that really helps with trauma because there's a lot of negativity there. There's a lot of uh, questions. Why would this happen? What kind of person does this? What kind of God allows this to happen? And so writing down those thoughts or feelings, and just pouring it out like an exercise. Almost do it. So you have to do it daily or every other day. Um, and as I mentioned, 10 to 15 minutes a day to try to get it out on paper and then try to see what positive thing can happen from that situation. For example, if you see maybe someone grew up being bullied by their classmates, but they see how much that hurt them, then when they grow up, they're going to be extra careful not to do that to others, or they're going to be put in more effort to be kind to others or to do good deeds, or when they have children, going to be extra careful that their children don't do that to other people. So even though the bullying they went through was a negative situation, there's a lot of good that was able to come out of it later on in their life and in other people's lives. So finding that silver lining and making sure that you focus on the good or able to discover the good that has come out of that is going to be incredibly important.
In your experience with your patient, Dr. Kalada, how long does it take them, either they are religious or not, but I mean, how long does it take in your experience to feel to feel forgiveness, like, especially, and I will focus a lot on the divorce cases more, because this is something, I don't know, I've been reading about the last 3 months, and it worried me a lot when I see what's coming out of those experience. But I've been reading about those cases.
Sure.
They are very, very traumatic. So how long does it take, you think?
So there's actually that reminds me of something that we know. It's called adverse childhood experiences or ACE, and that more focuses on people growing up who have had some of those unfortunate circumstances growing up, like divorce or maybe loss of a parent or some other situations in their life. And then the higher the number of they had growing up, the more likely they're going to have medical problems and psychological problems later on in their life. And so, depending on how high that number is, it may be more challenging or they may need more intensive help to get it under control. In the case of just a divorce, that is relatively low in the big scheme of things of all the problems that one can experience. Although in a family unit or family dynamic, that can have an important effect on the spouse, on the children, and all parties involved. I wish I knew exactly the best way to have the forgiveness for that or how to get through that, but I think in recently I read through actually a book called Divorce Busting, who actually helps guide the couples into rekindling their relationship so they can avoid divorce
Yeah.
because it can have such a detrimental impact on the family unit and on the people and the
This is
kids.
gonna be our next episode, our next series after talking
W-
about the.
If you like, we can. It's in a nutshell, it's more people focusing on the good that the relationship has provided and focus on the good rather than, the bad or the complaints they have of each other. But I mean, that would be a whole nother
Sure.
podcast in itself.
Sure. But the timeline is not clear, obviously.
But some people, they may need to be in their whole life working on this, working on the forgiveness.
So when do you think, Dr. Kalada, I can tell that I'm having uh, progress dealing with my trauma? Is it less nightmares, maybe?
Yeah, actually, that can be a sign. For example, if someone has nightmares 5 days a week and they go down to 2 days a week, maybe they learn that they're better able to manage the stress of their trauma. Or if they notice they don't have as much negative feelings anymore, not as much anger or resentment, that could be a good sign. But at the same time, people have to be on guard or ready because if they slack off or if they don't do those things that they're supposed to do to have that forgiveness, then maybe those negative feelings can come up.
بالتالي إحنا النهارده كده بنكون وصلنا لنهاية حلقتنا عن الصدمات النفسية. اتعلمنا النهارده كتير أوي عن الصدمات النفسية، عرفنا إيه هي الصدمات النفسية أصلًا عشان بس ندّي كل شيء تعريفه، وعرفنا إزاي نعرفها، نعرف إن إحنا بنعاني منها، وإزاي كمان ببساطة نقدر إن إحنا نعالجها. الغفران مهم جدًا، وهنفضل نتكلم عليه طول حياتنا. بنشكر دكتور أنتوني كلادا في نهاية هذه الحلقة على مجهوده الكبير. Many thanks Dr. Kalada for your effort to walk us through this phenomenal episode about trauma tonight.
Thank you for having me, Mark. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Hopefully, their viewers enjoyed watching it as well.
I'm sure we all learned something very important tonight, and looking forward for our upcoming podcasts that we are going to advertise about the surprise topic very soon about.
I'm looking forward to it too, Mark.
Thank you so much.